This is Tim Barry from Avail. You're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And I've got a great one for you this week. We have Thomas Barnett of Strike Anywhere, and I absolutely loved this conversation. Thomas is such a nice and engaging and well-spoken and thoughtful person. He gave us a lot of great stories during this conversation. We get some Strike Anywhere history. We talk about their latest record, Nightmares of the West, and how that came together. And he tells an incredible story about a tour they did in Europe, and their drummer broke his arm, but then a bunch of drummers that they met stepped in and helped them save the tour. And it was amazing. You're going to love this conversation, and that's coming up shortly. But first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at New Scene Pod. Pick up a shirt. We have shirts for sale at Death Wish Inc. There's a variety of t-shirts. It's getting warmer out. Huh? Now's the time to get one. There's a long sleeve option as well. The long sleeve is sold out in large. The other sizes are available. Pick one up. It's a great way to support the show. 5-star reviews. We could always use 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Open up the app, hit the 5-star button at the top of the screen on Spotify, or open your podcast app on your iPhone, search The New Scene, scroll down, hit that 5-star button, and if you write a nice review, I'll read it at the end of the show during the New Scene Community Hour. Also, you can always email me at newscenepod@iodinerecords.com. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. Stretch Armstrong, the revealing 12-inch EP, that's their first new music in nearly 2 decades, is available now. You can stream it right now and hear the whole thing on your streaming service of choice. The pre-order is up. Get the vinyl. It's going to go fast. Horsewhip have tour dates that kick off this week. The first show is March 20th in Melbourne, Florida. They'll be hitting the East Coast. Go see them. One Line Drawing, Sketchbook, the 2X LP is available now for pre-order. No Man, Glitter and Spit comes out March 29th. Pre-order yours, get it. It's a great record. Also, No Man will be playing May 3rd in Richmond, Virginia at Richmond Music Hall and May 4th in Brooklyn with Strike Anywhere. Go check them out if you have the chance. There's a second pressing of the Iron Roses self-titled LP that's up now to purchase. Get it before it's gone. And there's a new Iodine Recording shirt design available at their store at Death Wish Inc. Also, don't forget to support this month's sponsor, Persistent Vision Records. Persistent Vision is a DIY-focused label based in Richmond, Virginia, and it's home to releases from Page 99, Abac, Lagrimas, Massa Nera, Goetia, and more. You can order online today at persistentvisionrecords.com and deathwishinc.com. And here's some updates. Putrid Obsolete. That's the sophomore LP from Prisoner. 8 songs of nightmarish, blackened crust, metal, and harsh industrial noise. This album is sick. You've got to hear it. You have to. Check it out. I added a song to our New Scene 2024 Spotify playlist. But the album is out. Pick up a copy, listen to it, you won't regret it. And don't forget to pick up Cuatro Vientos Cinco Soles. That's the collaborative split album featuring Massa Nera and Quiet Fear. That just came out this past January. Page 99 have April Midwest tour dates with Massa Nera. Tickets are on sale now. Also, Page 99 will be playing Post Fest this year. The lineup for that fest is unbeatable. So go if you can. The pre-order is available now for Farn, The Departure of Consciousness LP. That's the 10-year anniversary reissue of the debut LP from Funeral Doom Ensemble, Farn. It's available on limited colored vinyl. They have East Coast tour dates that kick off in late May and West Coast tour dates in June. And they'll have a brand new LP out later this year on Persistent Vision Records, who you can follow on Instagram at Persistent Vision Records to get all of the latest updates. Okay, so listen, check back in with me after the conversation with Thomas. We'll do a quick check-in. We'll read some comments from some listeners. We'll do it all. But right now, we are going to speak to Thomas Barnett of Strike Anywhere. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Thomas Barnett. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Thomas, it's great to have you here. Look, you've done a lot over the years. Inquisition, Strike Anywhere. You've done it all. You're doing it all. And look, we'll cover all of that and probably even more. But first, Thomas, I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm well. Yeah, it's a sunny day. The storms have passed. I'm checking out my garden in the backyard. Normal 51-year-old punk stuff, I guess.
You're in the twilight years of punk now.
I think so. Although, we keep pushing the generation, like, as long as, Iggy Pop is still raging in a velvety, crepey way, like the rest of us, that's the path,
Yeah, he's still doing it and doing it well from what I hear.
Yeah, I saw him last year at the Cruel World Festival. We played twice because there was a lightning concern, so they canceled the very last artist of the day, which was Susie, and Iggy Pop played halfway through. So then he just came back and did like a victory lap opening for Susie again on the Sunday night. That was awesome. That was good
nice
to see the old punks, because it was like, I'm still in the middle of this cohort.
So wait, you're living in Los Angeles now?
I do. I live here with my wife. I, of course, go back and forth to Richmond a lot. But yeah, I've actually been living in California for a while. And
how long now?
We first moved here in 2007 to South LA, actually on the same street that we now live on again. And then in that period of time, we moved kind of north, spent 4 awesome years in Ventura, and then north to Berkeley and Oakland. Spent 6 years there through the pandemic, and then came back here to 10th Avenue. We're in Leimert Park now in South LA. So yeah, it's great. Like LA built.
How did you end up in LA? Like, what was the decision to move there?
Yeah, so my wife, she got a law degree ages ago in Portland at Lewis and Clark. So we were actually in Portland for 3 years before moving here. I was touring a lot. So it was more like I had 6 months out of those 3 years in those cities. But my wife got a law degree, took the California bar, started in 2008 and 9 litigating against the big banks during the housing foreclosure crisis at the city attorney's office here. There was just like a lot of righteous work that she could do. And taking the California bar, there is no reciprocity. So you've just got to stay here and or you have to take another bar for another state. But yeah, and so that's kind of why we're here. And it's nice and sunny, and I have some old friends from Richmond. Actually, my friend Mark, who played guitar in Inquisition, my first band, is out here too. We actually have friends that all lived at a house on 32nd Street in Churchill in Richmond 22 years ago, that all have migrated out here. So we all get together for Thanksgiving and we have a little Richmond family annex out here in LA.
Oh, nice. See, I like that. It's good if you have friends that move out with you, right? Because like most of my best friends are still back in Pennsylvania. I have one friend who moved to Southern California, and I'm here in New York City, but not many people joined me here. It's hard to live here in New York.
Yeah, I have this theory. I had a lot of good friends of mine had a spell in New York, like you going to graduate school or getting into their careers. Only 1 or 2 have really stayed. I have this theory that like each of us in some kind of doppelganger parallel universe thing, like you owe it to yourself to have a lifetime in a city like New York or Paris or London or Tokyo or Moscow. Like, you can't really get it done in like, you can't really have like an amazing experience and experience all of it unless you just like have multiple lives running in these cities. Cause I've toured a lot and there's always been moments where I'm like, damn, this would be amazing. Like to live, you just get a taste. You get a taste kind of underneath the layer of being a tourist, right? And you're kind of in that like punk world and you're staying with friends, you're meeting new friends, and you come back every year and you sort of watch a city grow, and like you just have that like organic conversation with a city itself and your memory, and your little life. And I sort of just started to fall in love with different cities over the years of traveling, and also realizing the impossibility of ever really knowing it. So yeah, I just think that that contradiction is special to acknowledge. And like, I think that finding another way, finding like another way to project your consciousness so you can live in different cities, especially these storied, poetic, amazing places. Like they're like worlds to themselves.
You've always been pretty politically conscious, and especially in Strike Anywhere as well. How did you develop that mindset? Like for me, I don't know why, but when I was younger and when I first got into hardcore music, I hated music with a message or like a political message. I don't know if I just wasn't ready to hear it, or I don't know what it was exactly, but over time and, through different occurrences in the world, I got my belief system. I started to understand things happening more, and I started to really dislike things that were happening. And that's how I got pushed on my direction. So where did it develop for you?
That's great, Keith. Yeah, it's easy to try to construct a linear narrative about it, and I think that's fair if people need to do that. I've done that from time to time too. I do think though, and it could just be because of like the way Richmond was, like it was a national hardcore destination in the early '80s, mid '80s, and then by the time you get to '87, and I'm 14 and trying to go see my first shows, it did feel like the scene was taking a breather. Like, like there was something had changed, or we were waiting for the next chapter a little bit. So there was this like, I don't know, like a vacuum almost, at least for all ages shows. And, but like thinking about what really moved me back then, like it wasn't necessarily the concepts, the ideas, it was the feeling. Like what if MDC is talking about fighting against racism and fighting against homophobia and talking about fighting against Reagan, it's the way the songs feel more than like what that text is about. Like, especially as a younger person, like music and art is there to catalyze your emotions, to ride alongside your feeling, to make you feel validated and alive and seen. Like, and so, yeah, like I was really tied to the emotions and the approach of it, more than I was like the ideas for a long time. We had a local band called Four Walls Falling, who I talk about in every podcast. They were amazing, and they came from like straight edge hardcore, kind of like between Minor Threat and Youth of Today. That kind of amorphous, interesting period when bands were trying to figure out like, what are we going to do? Like hardcore's evolving, and there was all this branching out, right? Thrash was beginning, and DC was having the Revolution Summer and emotional hardcore. And like, Four Walls was local, like Richmond guys who were a little bit older than my generation of punks, and their fucking record Culture Shock, which just was re-released on Vinyl Conflict Records over the summer, is such a watershed moment, and had really bracingly political lyrics about the environment, about sexism, about racism, about capitalism. And it was like insane to check that out when I was 15 and 16 and go to all ages hardcore shows, just a few that they would play. And I was more gravitated towards like UK punk, like Subhumans, GBH. And that's kind of where the young scene was. And then Four Walls Falling would play a show, and it was just very like amazing. Like, this is a song about wealth inequality and systemic racism. And like before really those phrases could capture that we would be talking about that as regular folk outside of academia. But those songs were like, it's richly detailed, payloads, for that. So I think that got me hooked, where I could say like, man, so the feeling of this and the way this feels to like be engaged with, be a part of it, like, and then these are the ideas, and these are the ideas that they seem to matter to the world. It's like you're stumbling through the darkness a little bit, because nothing in culture, especially at that time, but still, I mean, like pop music and pop culture it's explicitly trying not to make you get too upset, or
Yeah.
to cut too deep, or to show you another piece of yourself that's strong, that can participate, and that like your voice is here, and your voice is a part of this moment in time. I think that's what music really does, and why we have always, been doing it since whatever, the dawn of our species. But yeah, that's my long answer. Like, so that local band put that stuff together for us in a way that like accidentally moved me forward. I probably would have definitely gotten into more political punk later, like in my early 20s or late teens. But because the All Ages Hardcore shows just happened to have this band, and there was a bunch of other 88 Youth Crew inspired hardcore bands that were just talking about, those classic topics about, addiction and friends betraying you and the crew and stuff. And that stuff's important too. Like we can joke about it, but it's also like, those are also very important revolutionary ideas. And so, but there was always a place you could be like, oh yeah, straight edge, they do that thing. That's for that, that's a fine community. Good on them, but when you take those ideas and then you talk about like, we're going to get sober and we're going to really look at like the patriarchy. We're going to really look at like the violations of capitalism on the planet. And we're going to look at colonialism and the impact of culture. And it's cool not to maybe be a drunk or be addicted to drugs, because then we can get together and try and take on some of these problems and try and communicate with each other. And I don't know, all that stuff was amazing. Like, and some of it is just the community of it, like come here, like go out of your house and join with these strangers and feel something collectively. That's the part of it that is so enduring about this counterculture. Nothing else is really like that, except of course probably faith-based communities, right? Like, come
Right.
join
Like
these
whatever
strangers and feel
the
something.
community is.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I guess the difference is that like, this isn't about, you have to believe this stuff. Like, in fact, let's question these beliefs together, right? Let's talk about your pain and confusion and some of these ideas, and we're going to get some stuff wrong, and none of us are leaders, and like that kind of stuff baked in to hardcore and punk is extremely important, of course.
So yeah, like you were talking about, what attracted me to these shows and everything initially was the energy, which was unlike anything I had ever experienced, and the community. I was really all about those two things. But at the time, I was a overly emotional, dramatic teenager. So I gravitated. I was angry, so I liked angry stuff, and I was always upset about a girl. So if a band was like yelling about that, I liked that too. And I was a drunk and an addict for a long time. So not until around when I was 30 did I really start to think about bigger things and political things and that kind of thing. Actually, it was the 2008 financial crisis that kind of sent me in that direction, because we know what happened. The insurance companies and the banks bankrupted the country, and then they went to the government and said, hey, you got to bail us out. And the government was like, okay, so taxpayers, you have to bail them out. You have to bail them out or we're in big trouble. So we bailed them out, and then they just all wrote themselves giant checks. And after that happened, I kind of lost faith, or not kind of, I lost faith in the whole system.
Yeah. Yeah. It was insane. Like, I mean, there was all these little moments where it just started to seem like we were grinding up into a reality where the masks were off. And the theater of like a public space and, democracy and what people need, what everyday people need, being important beyond like the needs of the very, very, very wealthy. And then you just see our government like just being a valet for corporations and banks. It's insane.
Yeah, there's no like, people were provided for in the 50s and 60s. It seemed like you could go to a grocery store and work a job and provide for a family still. It just seems like the greed has gotten so out of control. But the worst part is that a lot of people don't seem to notice. Like they'll go vote in an election year and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm really making a difference." But in my opinion, you're really not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely like there's definitely a sense that the sense of powerlessness that's been kind of shot through us throughout time. Like there's this like pathological engine in our society, right? That's trying to get us to feel smaller and smaller and to try and get us to kind of forget each other, right? And like trying to hardwire and diffuse our empathy. Mutual aid and empathy is why we have this world, this society, and having creative endeavors with each other and lifting each other up is the point. So, but that stuff keeps, board members from getting wealthier, right? Like having a strong polity and strong democratic processes from the ground up, isn't going to make very rich people much, much richer.
Right.
So those are the things that we're faced with. It's definitely like trying to unwind from the past 10 years and then seeing the pathologies that started 15 years before that, 20 years before that, like it's not a fun thing to do, like, but it does help you as far as like really finding root causes and being able to deal with complex ideas, and I'm like a high school dropout. I read, and I get excited about learning. And I talk to people and I try to listen as much as I can. But I don't have any pretensions about like, having like a deep and academic, knowledge, about how to solve these problems, about like what exact revolutionary recipe is the one that's going to work. I almost, over the years, I think that like we kind of keep taking a snapshot of politics and call that politics, right? And we call that like our position, our, like the view of social justice or like what I can tackle, like each one of us finding like the cause they want to donate to or the thing they want to research. And because it feels destabilizing. Like I know so many of my friends were like, hadn't really thought about foreign policy at all. Like, had a sense, like a post World War II sense of the world and maybe even like a post Cold War world sense of the world. But then, of course, when 9/11 happened, so many friends were like, what? Now I have to learn everything I didn't already know about like the world order, about Islam, about, like the global mechanics of transnational finances and, all of that stuff. And so I think that we keep getting these shocks, right, to our little lives, like working and trying to contribute and participate to our communities with our families, make art that we believe in, support art that we believe in, that we need. And then this great shock happens. We're like, oh my God, how did that happen? Or like, how did I not see that coming? Or like, how did no one see that coming? So I think that's the space that we're in now.
Yeah, that's I just try to stay focused on the art I'm creating, friendships, communities, do what I can for people when I can, because I'm not necessarily going to change the entire world myself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like the world is going to just do its thing,
Yes.
And like, we just want to be able to be in the right tone and have in the right physical and emotional like posture to handle it best when it comes, and I think that like the certain division in America that we're seeing and the way that like some of the stuff is extremely deliberate, right? Like media systems that are just keeping people tired and angry and give you someone to blame all the time, and right. Like, so if you don't have time to take a break, right? Cause you're like on your 11-hour reset from your truck and you've got like a couple podcasts to listen to or a couple news channels, like, they've got you, right? I mean, and it's even the same on the left side, like in a lot of ways. Like if, you're working and family and you've just got a few hours a week to like try and learn something new, to try and find a place to catch up, right? Like with how to think about the world, how to process these events, how to process like how distant we're starting to feel from half of the country, some of whom are in our families, right? And like, this is a huge psychological thing. This is something that none of us are particularly prepared for. So I think that is a big function of it. Right. And then there are almost accidental forces of inertia with our tools, with the digital age, helping us stay like wound up and anxious, and also weirdly superficially approaching ideas and having a more desperate need to not go that deep, right? Like, and not get lost or confused. So then I think those are some of the forces that are grinding faster and faster and faster in our country and in other countries and in our society. Um, so one thing that seems important that I think that, a lot of people I speak with, and my own self, like, think about trying to do is find a way to slow down, find a way to take a breath, and not a breath where you're looking at your phone and you're scrolling. That's not slowing down. I mean, this is basic stuff. Like, but it's also new. It's new things that we have to be vigilant about without the tension and the anxiety of, oh, that's another thing I have to be vigilant about. So that's a part of it too. But like, also, man, going for a walk and getting like a little lost for a minute, like going through your city and taking a walk and looking at places and trying to just stay with your feet and stay in that moment, and not just have a goal and do that goal and go to the next thing and chase through your life. Like, I think that's another thing that's happening to all of us, like, where we're not really like checking ourselves, and that's another thing that keeps breeding this engine of anxiety, and then also makes us less able intellectually and emotionally to really get down to business, to take care of ourselves. And then because we've taken care of ourselves, we can take care of our families. And because we've taken care of our families, we can reach out to our neighbors. And because we reach out to our neighbors, we can then get deep with the city, with the natural world around us. Like, I think some social media tools have been interesting because you do get a sense of like, well, how far have the coyotes come into the city? Oh, what is next door going to tell me? You have these little moments that feel like, okay, now we can. But if you're not actually on the street talking to your neighbors about that thing that you read on next door, like, are you there? Right? Like, it's like, and it starts to get really, really kind of weird. We just stay real isolated because it's easier to kind of anonymously quasi communicate using our phones instead of looking at someone, waiting for that pause in their breath, listening. Like, you're getting a lot more out of interacting with people when you're interacting with people, and you're getting a lot less than even you are when you're just doing social media stuff, when you're just using these profound devices like the one that we're talking on right now.
This right now. See, but now we might be in front of computers, but I feel like this is a real deep conversation. So that's good.
I appreciate you letting me like work over these ideas. Like, it's yeah, I mean, we're in that space between tours and shows. So, I start to get a little like, and I think my bandmates too, I think anybody that plays music or has a creative endeavor, like, you have these spells when you're kind of dormant, you're building up to something, you're waiting on the next, like, where you start to just have a lot of thoughts. And you're also writing a lot. You're also trying to figure out like, what is the next thing I need to say? Like, what is this song that's about to vomit out of me, or piece of a song that I'm then going to send my bandmates to see what they think. That's the space that we're in right now.
Are you working on new Strike Anywhere songs with the band?
Yeah. And we kind of have been since even during quarantine. Like, so my bandmates got together in Richmond. They opened the garage door in the winter so they could practice. This is like 21, right? Or 20 actually. So from that moment, there's been tons of different crazy awesome sounding hit record on your iPhone demos. And we're not precious about the demos being pristine. We just need the feeling to be right, I guess. So also, bandmates will just grind out some things on a guitar and then send to me, and then I will then get in that frame where I can try and build a little song out of it and then send it back to them, and we go back and forth. And in some ways it's cool. Like, there was that time when we just sit in a room together and try and write and stare at each other and be like, oh, what's next? What are we going to, and like, that can be productive and magical. But there's also like, I think sometimes you need to go to the lab with yourself and the song and then try and really get into it. And then, each of us bring it back, and it slowly builds and develops. So that's why we are still a band, and also why it takes so long between records, because we're deliberate about, I know it may not feel like it, like when you listen to the record, like, but for us, that took a long time and it took a lot out of us. And we wanted to, at least for us, make it something that adds and not just repeats.
Yeah, no, and it was interesting reading about your last release, Nightmares of the West. You described two moments in previous publications where the record really came together, and one was at Warsaw in Brooklyn, right? You're in those backstage catacombs, and you're just sitting with the band and kind of bouncing ideas around. Do I have that correct?
That's right. Yep. Yeah.
And the other was in Mexico City. I think you were on a rooftop somewhere you were going to play a fest, and the weather was just right, and that was another one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was our first time in Mexico City, and we'd actually gotten in a day early, and we went to like a local punk club and saw like this great Oi show with like La Inquisition from Spain and just a bunch of bands. And it was just like kind of a cool moment just to go to a show with my bandmates. Like, as civilians, like not just get together and, work on a set list of old songs to play at a festival, right? Like this, having those social moments where we build memories together and we're friends and we're just in the scene, we're just doing it like with these other kids, that's like always the thing that we kind of aim for and need, right? Like, we were talking about, over the years and touring a lot, different bands, have to do different stuff. Like sometimes to stay copacetic and have the relationships with the band members still be good, people will have to get separate hotel rooms or even be in different places, and for us, we're, it's so sometimes promoters will ask, they'll be like, if you're going to Australia or Japan or, Europe or South America, they'll be like, so you guys how many rooms you guys need? And we're like, well, let's just put all the beds in that one room, or let's just get how can we make it so we can hang out the whole time,
So you'll share a room with multiple people still?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
See, I like to get my own room because, listen, dudes are gross and a lot of gross sounds come out of them. And I don't want to be around it.
No, that's fair too. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that just the way we were just laughing about how like, we never thought about it before, but we kept getting asked by different promoters over the years, like, you guys okay with just these two doubles? I was like, and a single for the driver? We're like, yeah, man, it's cool. Can we get, like, does one of those have a window that opens up to the roof? Like we ask questions like that instead of, can we get 6 singles, or whatever. But we just it just dawned on us that like we having those moments where maybe we're talking about new songs, maybe we're like, or not, we're not talking about anything at all, or maybe we're trying to go out, we're trying to have a night before or after our night and be fold into that place, to that city. And not just, I mean, it's cool to like just tour around and see the Acropolis, but man, we could go to that punk bar or we could see a show. Like that is always something we treasure. And, but yeah, that's what Mexico City was like for us. And Warsaw was that we've been here so many times. If there's all these little rooms, this door opens into another door. And then all of a sudden you're in like a Polish kitchen and someone lives here. Like one of those, it's like an endless magical building where you're like, okay, we're doing a punk show. And then we come up these stairs and I feel like I'm in a school. And then now I'm over here and there's these like wooden tables and, oh wait, there's a door in the corner and then you go up another flight of stairs. Anyway, Warsaw's crazy and beautiful. And so we could just sit there and like pass a guitar around and everybody, just pile on some ideas and Matt's like, okay, wait, you mean here? Oh wait, here. Oh wait, this one. Yeah. And and he's like, meanwhile, I'm writing a set list of the set we're going to play with Hot Water Music. And there's this new song that's like emerging. You just see it like this little flame in the corner and we're all standing around and Matt's in the chair with the guitar. It's like one of those moments where you're like, man, this is cool. Like this is what being in a band is meant to be like. Cause even if you can't always live in the same city and you're not having that Tuesday night band practice every night, anymore. And you are using some technology to get ideas back and forth, sound files, like, and you're flying to places to meet each other and you haven't seen each other in a couple months or half a year. And those are new things. And, that's not necessarily like hometown punk band anymore. The place you started from, like from that warehouse, half of you are living in the same house, all that. But having those moments that I guess you could describe as like soulful and like authentic and like things that you just like hope still keep happening, is a rich part of being in Strike Anywhere. I'm just grateful to have that with those guys.
Yeah, I really loved reading those stories and hearing you talk about that, especially with Warsaw, because I love that venue. I've only been there twice so far, but last time I went, I was just hanging out and I think I met the general manager of that place and we were in like a side room where there was a bar and it's just, it's just a really cool place. And I really like what you're describing about in terms of community with the band and friendship and making time to hang out. I think that's important. Like, because me, I'm like, everything is so regimented and scheduled because I have a lot of stuff going on. But for my band now, I need to be in the room with those two guys and we need to chop it up and throw riffs around and say, no, this isn't working. Let's try this. Or just hammer away on the instruments to find something that works. And it sounds like you guys were doing that just in downtime. And I know you would use sound check opportunity to like work some things out too, right?
Oh, for sure. We like go to a lot of like, how early can we get there? How early can they open that venue? Like torture those poor Dutch punk sound men and women. Like, can someone WhatsApp these people so we can get into the Milan Club at noon? Like that happened in October. Yeah. And oftentimes we'll just like, let's record from the board. I'm so sorry. We'll buy you guys some beer. Like, what do you need? Thanks for letting us come in early. And then we get together and a lot of times the sound people don't mind because then they get to like sound check us real early and everyone gets to break and have dinner and maybe wander around the city for 2 hours before coming back and all that kind of boomerang effect of being in a new place just for one night. Okay, now we're on the road again, next place. But I do think because Keith, your band is fresh. Like you need to like have those face-to-face breathing the same air moments to kind of bond and build that chemistry and have that muscle memory, creative muscle memory. And like we got that going in 99. And so it's like we can still like kind of lock back into that place pretty quickly. Because I go to Richmond a lot. My parents are still there and all my old friends and nephews and, it's my home really. Like, and I love it. And I love going there and being kind of a ghost, seeing the city change, all that, and walking around and like kind of like honoring how it's different and then honoring the places that made me, but when we go there, we just roll back into the bike lot and, figure out real quick, okay, we got 3 hours. This is going to be great. I'm still jet lagged. Like, let's make this happen. What do we got? What are we interested in right now? What's that new riff that everyone's feeling today? And we may not have that time for another 3 months, but every time we do, it's important. And it still feels like this is that kitchen, right? And we know where everything is.
You said you have family in Richmond, so I guess your trips back there will be band and family related for the most part?
Yeah, band and family bleeds over into just old friends, like all of our old friends. Like, I mentioned like 4 of us moved out here at different times, trickled over to the West Coast for different reasons. And then, a lot of people are in other places. But most of my closest, bestest, oldest friends are still in Richmond. So yeah, and the city itself. We played over the James Fest this summer. I don't know if you know that. That's Avail's festival, and it's outdoors.
Yes.
July 28th on Browns Island, which is an island by the James River. Snapcase played after us. A thunderstorm rolled in during their set. It was apocalyptic and dramatic. Everyone had to evacuate that island and then come back for Gaslight Anthem and Avail, and that felt like a totally different day and night. And then so hours from when we played and many more hours from when we loaded in, I went up on stage and sang Connection with Tim, which is an old Avail song. And so like when they moved to Richmond in 91, it was amazing. And like, it was like adding, an extremely important component of our generation of that scene. And it was also that kind of explosion of punk. Richmond became a national city, like again, had a second, third wind of that, like with, of Maximum Rock and Roll and Born Against coming through and sort of like, Tim from Avail especially was really like pivotal in booking a lot of shows and like kind of opening up the like all of the newer bands getting to know Richmond, right, coming through. And then that's when Inquisition started. So we would play with a lot of these bands like Rorschach and Born Against and 411, and like it was just amazing. But yeah, so over the James last summer, cut to 2023, and it's like being able to participate in that and it was insanely hot, Keith. It was like so hot when we played. Blazing sun, 105-degree heat index, 98 degrees
Ugh.
Fahrenheit. Like all of our friends, I felt so bad. Like people were passing out. Like it was like it's just a different mode when you're like the show and you're like feeling it and it feels amazing and you're outside, but everyone is like about to pass out from heat exhaustion. You look at your bandmates who are fit and younger than you by some years, and they're giving you the look of like I need to be around for my kids. T, you got to cut this down. Like it was like that. And then Snapcase played, and then like the beautiful thing that happens in Richmond and southern cities, like pressure drops, temperature drops 15 degrees, wind kicks up, the sky turns dark purple, and a storm rolls in. And that's like every summer I can remember of my childhood and all the way into my 30s before I moved. Like that's one of those strange, beautiful things. And I was like, man, like in Richmond also, it's like you're still going to have to pay your dues. Like that show that almost killed us, right? Like we didn't get the Snapcase slot where they got the wind and the storm, and it was beautiful. But it's so good for like I was out there like kind of like hobbling around after we played, trying to hydrate, trying to see if I was still alive. And like Snapcase played and the wind blew and it was cool all of a sudden. And I was like, this is awesome. Snapcase sounds fucking awesome, And it was immediately like I was like, just like at the show. I was like, it was like, didn't even think about how we had just played. Like that was wiped from my mind. But anyway.
What a great visual. Like the storm rolling in as Snapcase is about to play. See, the weather knew that Snapcase was about to do something big.
Oh, it was so good. It was so good. And the other thing that was crazy about the storm was that was like everyone had to evacuate except the people that were the bands and the staff. So just like me hanging out in the rain, eating a veggie burger with the food truck people, just chilling hard, not even sure when the city was going to stop the evacuation and get people to come back to the island. But, they did. And it was cool. It was like such a different show, different experience after that. But yeah, I was recently back there in December and I went back to Browns Island and, in the cold, like in a parka at night and just like wandered around there just to kind of revisit it. Like, wow, man, I was here 6 months ago, almost to the day. And it was just so different, but yeah, it was cool. The lightning was streaking into the purple clouds. And then I swear there was 6 different drones went and into the lightning cloud and came back out. And I was like, what is that? Did you see that? To my friends. And they're like, yeah, why did those drones just go into the lightning? And we're just like, okay, now you guys got to go and I've got to stay. Super weird, Keith. Anyway, there was like a haunted, but like that's some Edgar Allan Poe, Richmond shit. Like it's always surreal. There's always this tiny southern sauce of Gothic metaphysics on top of that rustic town.
I like that you went back to the island in winter just to check it out. I do that too. Like I'll go back to places by myself and just look at them and see what kind of memories it unlocks. I like that.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, it's like what I'm clumsily trying to describe about like being present, being in the physical world, and like kind of like not having a plan. Like not doing something because I'm here because I'm doing this. Once I finish this, I'm not going to be here anymore. I've got to do the next thing. Like I think that's how we've all been trained and conditioned to be productive and how to do our lives as adults. And I think that like there's a problem. I think that we need to really review that and try and make some different time, right? To not just have time that fits neatly into 4 categories or 3.
It's weird to think about, right? Like at one point, Strike Anywhere was probably touring most of the year, every year, and now not. Where is all your time now? You're married, right? So, do you have like some kind of other career? Like, where does all your time go?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, so we toured a lot until 2010, and then the box truck, DIY RV vehicle that we had kind of dramatically blew up at the end. It's just great. Like we'd gone all the way out to Seattle and then Vancouver and then all the way back across Canada, all the way to like Providence, Rhode Island. And then with Bane in the summer of 2010, classic Bane Strike Anywhere tour. Let's go somewhere slightly different this time, boys. Yeah. And we did. It was so much fun. And we came back and we dropped off. Eric was living in Philly at the time. Matt was living in Baltimore. So we kind of like not lived in the same city for a while. Like in the, everyone had different things taking them different places. But at that point I was in Richmond and Garth and Mark were in Richmond, and our drive shaft fell out from the bottom of the truck. We lost power. Luckily, we were in the right lane. And then we just glided, and Mark gently he drives fire trucks now, so of course he's a good driver. He drove this beast with a big trailer, and it got us safely onto the Jersey wall and then the shoulder. And if we had had that drive shaft drop out a little earlier, we would have just had a Jersey wall and not a shoulder, and that would have been a bigger problem. But we had to go retrieve this giant 150-pound hunk of hot iron from the road, wherever it was on I-95, south of DC, hour and a half from Richmond. So Garth and I roll out, pass by some construction workers. Garth and I look like we do. And these construction workers look at us and kind of catcall us. And it's that weird, like, wow, you guys just, your default reaction is like some kind of homophobic craziness. That's how you live. That's what you're doing right now. And Garth and I just like, okay, cool. We might get beat up, but we're going to have to get this drive shaft off the road. So we're doing that first. We'll holler at you fellows on the way back. And then we get the drive shaft. We put it on our shoulders. It is still hot. I'm carrying this heavy thing. And then we rode back, and we walked back, on the construction side, on the shoulder. And these guys look at us like totally different attitude. There's some respect, And then we get through that gauntlet of toxic masculinity, and we get back to our box truck, and then we're like, well, and we get it, then we get it towed, and then we have to kind of harvest it, and then we sell it, and then it's over. And we had a bunch of different problems with it before, like it was leaking gas. The generator no longer worked. We were just like kind of in a blackout truck where we slept in these bunks. Anyway, after that, we sort of re-examined things a bit. Still did some tours. Ruiner broke up. We bought Ruiner's van. But it was kind of like, let's slow down a touch. Let's turn it down from 11 to like 8. And my bandmates started to have families and kids. Eric kind of got a pretty demanding and involved job. He is the drum tech for that band Imagine Dragons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he got that close to that time, maybe a year or two after. He was working at the 930 Club in DC. And then through that, when that band was just starting, he met them. And there's an old, generation older than me, punk guy who's actually the main tour manager of that band who hired Eric. So there's a weird old school Guar Richmond punk lineage thing in the bureaucracy of Imagine Dragons at this stage. So Eric's not completely uncomfortable in it. Like there's some good, he's really, and he gets to go to like wild places and, like make that band sound good. And like, it's cool. Like, I think it's a cool job for him. I had been working in warehouses and like produce. I was a grocery store clerk in between tours with Strike Anywhere. And even before that, Inquisition times, forever. Like I'd work at whatever mom and pop organic market existed, and just run the produce section. And I don't know, I just kind of kept having that job, and I kept having it. My resume just kept looking insane because I kept having these like organic farm markets, like 9 of them. So I kept getting hired, right? So it was like this perpetual loop. And I really liked the work, and I'm vegan. And anyway, it's cool to have a discount at a grocery store.
Plus you have the dreads. So people maybe assume about like organic farming and compost heaps and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and I do low key. I do know I actually have an urban farm here at this house right now with composting. Guilty.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but during right before the pandemic, and then definitely during it, I started working at a labor law firm that also does racial discrimination, workplace harassment, mass torts, like when medicine is trotted out by a pharmaceutical company and it hurts people. Right. And so I started I just became like a paralegal researching cases and helping attorneys litigate. And now I kind of run a department. It sounds great.
Oh, wow.
I run a team of attorneys about really communicating with class members in giant class actions, industrial class actions, getting evidence against employers who have defrauded their employees for years and years and years. So that is what I do now.
So not only are you attacking injustices through the message of the band, but you're really doing it in the world too, with this team of attorneys you're leading.
It's a weird, lucky kind of accident of the pandemic. I just read and read and read, and I started because I was working on these cases, and I started reading about case law, and then I was like, and luckily, like my partner's a lawyer, so I can be like, hey, what does this mean when this is this and that different? And she's like, man, I told you that yesterday, and I'm like, well, tell me now. So that's kind of how it rolls at my house. And again, I'm an uncredentialed person, but I just really am motivated by this particular field. And I'm trying to understand it more and more. And I can explain to people who are attorneys, who have really good intentions, but maybe grew up with different resources and spent their lives in school basically, and they know about academic writing and they know about the law, but they maybe don't have experience speaking with blue collar people as much. So trying to talk to a truck driver about so do you know that you didn't get paid overtime for that? Did you know you were supposed to get paid? It's delicate. It's important, to make people feel respected. Anyway, for whatever reason, it's like a strange spot that I found myself in where I can most of the time develop a script, develop ideas for how to interact best respectfully with working class folks who, maybe, and especially you can probably imagine this mentality, especially in America and our culture. A lot of people don't want to be told that they've been taken advantage of. They don't want to be told that their employers who they think are their friends, their bosses, everybody's their own boss. I'm an entrepreneur. That's a point of pride. That's a way people need to feel. And,
right.
And I get it. So going down the wormhole of well, because of the Federal Labor Standards Act, you were actually owed, all this different money for these different things, and your boss knew this, and they didn't let you know this, and you could have paid for your son's, taking them, making sure you anticipate that people are not going to get tripped up and paralyzed by a sense of shame or being condescended to or any of that uselessness, right? You want to be with that person on that level. They work that job. They believe in that job. They know stuff you could never know, right? They're like a roughneck, which is that word for folks who work skilled maintenance workers on oil rigs in the ocean or out in the deserts. That's a whole lifestyle, right? And that's a whole thing. People feel incredible amounts of pride in nursing. And it's a lot of stuff that you can't just roll up on someone and pretend you understand it. You need to really listen. So, it's kind of strange. And I'm not trying to make it out like the people that work on my team are snobby or anything. They're not. They're principled. You work on the plaintiff's side in law, you are getting paid 3 times less than the same person coming out of law school going for defense. So you are 3 times at a distance from paying off your law school debt, from being able to do anything, right? So you're taking a pay cut because you believe in trying to use law, which has historically been used to prop up the rich, to justify, atrocities. You're trying to take this and use it to support people and then develop precedent. So the thing I dig about it, Keith, the thing that I think is somehow interesting and reminds me of art, reminds me of music, is that there's the sense of precedent where if you get a good order, if you litigate that case properly and you fucking find the facts and you get people to stand up and speak before the court, and you change that judge's mind and all the resources that rich defense counsel throws at the case, you still bat them away, right? And you're still standing up strong. And that precedent puts a spot in time and builds strength through time, right? For the argument that, yeah, these workers deserve that money, that these companies have to be, not only to behave right and be moral and be legal, but they have to know that they're not behaving in a vacuum, that we're watching you, right? And all the workers are like, wow, I didn't know that this was wrong, I just thought this is the way. I was just like that 6 years ago. I probably didn't get overtime pay, working. I would unload a truck way after my 8th hour into the freezer of the mom and pop grocery store I was working because it had to get done and I was the good person going to do it. All those feelings, right? I totally understand. So anyway, that's kind of a part of the job. Other than the legal ease and finding evidence and navigating to different courts, different Trump appointed judges who are business friendly. I had to slow that down for you because it's getting worse, right?
Isn't it crazy that the system is built to protect businesses and capital and property, and it's structured right so that we won't get paid. The people working won't get paid. And if you want to actually get your money, you have to be able to afford a lawyer to battle the lawyer of this company who doesn't want to pay you and is using the legal system to drain you.
Yeah.
That's the standard in this country, and it shouldn't be.
So we do plaintiff side law, like that does this kind of work. We do it's on contingency, so no one has to pay us. Like we get paid out of the settlement at the end if it settles, but if it doesn't, we're just doing it. We're doing it anyway, and we're doing the best damn job we possibly can anyway. So I like that. I think I might work for like a particularly decent firm. It's not a nonprofit. Like they do want to make a profit. Like partners like are rich people. Like all that stuff is real. Like it's but I don't know. Like there's something about it there's something that everybody like when they hired me, I was like, I'm doing this because of ideology. You know that, right? I don't know anything about anything. And they were like, yeah, okay, but we know, we've seen you learn, everything, stuff more than most of our second year attorneys. Like you're going to do this job. We need you. And you know how to work with people. So let's see if this is a good fit. And it's like 5 years later, still a good fit. And now, I have like healthcare and stuff like, so that shit's good too. But enough about me. Like, so my bandmate, they also got some jobs, some careers. Mark, during pandemic, like, kind of late in the game, like, went out, tried out for the fire department, and now he's like a seasoned veteran firefighter in Richmond. And he is probably in a very, very small political minority among firefighters, as you can imagine, being like, hard left anti-fascist guitarist in a punk band, but he is such a charismatic and decent person. And like, I think he's probably changed minds and just, it's so cool. And he knows a great deal about saving people's lives. And he knows a great deal about breaking into, someone's grandma that is a hoarder and she can't breathe. And you have to get through that house and get her out before she burns, like all that stuff, man. Like, so I'm so proud. Like the Strike Anywhere, like, kind of time off has been filled with my bandmates doing amazing stuff, raising amazing children, like, so I think it's all good. But the one thing, I think, we need to have the shows, we need to have the music. It's not going to end, like, but I do think that like every band, you kind of have to balance it with like your quote civilian life too. And you have to nurture that. You can't just be unhappy in between tours, unhappy between albums, like, and you have to accept what changes too, and like, and just love the fact that you can still show up for it and your friends come out to the show still. And like your audience still believes in it. It's just like, it's something beyond gratitude. It's like something that's so special. It's kind of why so the last show we played before the world shut down was in March of 2020, and it was with Praise and No Man. And so these shows coming up in May, the one in Richmond, at the Richmond Music Hall, and then the one at St. Vitus in Brooklyn are with Praise and No Man. And we wanted to kind of just have more of that, like that shouldn't have been just a one-off. Like we wanted to, because, the cool thing about touring that, is it's not just about like the era of you, the era of the band, what record you're playing, how active you've been, maybe who was in the band on that tour, if you have a lot of members, or, change it up, but also who you were with, like the tour mates. And that's a piece of art too. That's a big part of the chemistry. That's the community. And having like old dear friends in No Man. I mean, Eric grew up with them in Northern Virginia, like, half of Strike Anywhere are from Northern Virginia, and like know that DC scene so well. And Praise too. Like there's just this, Matt was in Baltimore for like 10 years, like just doing a lot of touring and stuff, but also just being there, like being in that community. So anyway, that's another thing. Like when you can curate the shows you play and you're not playing that many a year, and it's going to be special. Like you want to find your people and keep building that and pushing that into the future. Right. And then like, and also just being, I don't know, having that strength, that emotional resilience through the songs and through the community to let that change you and let that also be a part of why you're writing what you're writing. why the new music is going to feel this way, why the songs are going to have this tone, right? This approach. So I think it's a part of the whole thing. Like the more isolated and compressed people get, the less interesting what they make is. The less they're listening like to the world, the more they're just kind of like up their own butts. and, and also boring, you know. So that's kind of like explains what we're doing now, why the frequency of it is the way it is, and what the goals are and the philosophy of it has become.
It's a beautiful thing to see because, you know, Strike Anywhere was in its youthful prime doing its thing when I first got into this music. And, you know, it's all these years later. And it's good that you can still be together, right? We're not on the road 10 months out of the year anymore, but we're still finding the time to write together and play together when we can. And just seeing you connect with newer bands like No Man. Like, I know the members of No Man have been doing other things throughout the years, but they're newer to me. So, you know, me seeing both of you playing together, I'm like, oh, that's exciting. And I've had Maha on the show, and she's really compelling and has an important message in her band. So it's just good to see people coming together and helping each other and helping the greater world at large as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Maha's amazing. They're all such amazing, inspiring people. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we have been blessed to be surrounded by just geniuses, courageous, important, beautiful folks. The first time we all got back together, like after the pandemic, well, after everyone felt safe, you know, I mean, young children, right? Like my bandmates had young kids. So we were very cautious. And I have, you know, elders, like my parents are doing great, but they're in their 80s. So, you know, everybody was making sure that we were going to be as careful as possible. But we got back together, hung out in June of 21. And before we even loaded into the practice space to like, man, play those songs on Nightmares of the West, because that record came out in the summer of the pandemic in 2020. And like, so we never had a chance. So before we even did that, we met at Dogwood Dell at the park, strapped on knee braces, started stretching. Other friends of ours from the hardcore scene came out, and we did the 5K marathon for UNRWA, for the Palestinian relief nonprofit. They're having another marathon this coming Saturday too, worldwide. But anyway, that was the first thing we did. That was for Mehe, and she helped organize that and bring it. And then after that, recovering from the marathon that we ran together, we loaded into the space and just had 2 days of like joyful, like practicing songs that were on a record for a year before we could practice them all together, you know, after recording them. So that was like, it's another one of those moments. This is giving you these little vignettes across the past decade of like times with the band, you know. And it's just, again, it's like you said, it's not relentless touring or like climbing up different ladders or whatever, you know, inadvertent thing happens when you're just really active and stuff. But it's like having experiences that are deliberate and curated and like a part of like how we grow as punks, as activists, as friends. And it's like, it's huge for us. And it's what's going to remain of the band, even if we have a year where we don't play a show, you know? And I think that's critical. It's beautiful.
Has there been a year where you didn't play a show at all?
Yeah, there was one. And I think it was 14. I think it was 2014. We didn't actually play a single show. That's when Eric first got hired by Imagine Dragons, and they were like just nonstop touring. And that's when my bandmates had young kids too. So it was a good time to take a rest, you know, and reflect on things. But yeah, I mean, I know we missed it, and we always do. We're always like feeling it, like kind of building, you know, like the band group chat gets a little more like crazy. You're like, what about this? Oh shit. You know, like post tour, we're like, all right, man, I'll give you a breather. I'll be in touch. Like, you know,
yeah.
But that doesn't last very long. Usually 3 days later, there's like another like, oh man, did you get the new record? Yeah. Oh shit. You know, so that stuff's wild. We had a tour in Europe, September of last year, where Eric couldn't go. So, well, no, Eric did go, but he broke his arm on the 5th night of the 20 show tour. Just
how'd that happen?
Yeah. So he was walking back from the bar with all of our friends and our bass player and our friend Lloyd. He's like our giant English roadie. And he just fucking fell on a medieval sidewalk in Germany, and just the hardest fall, like broke his radius ulna on his right wrist. And next morning, hospital, big red cast. And we were like, okay. Everyone started to look at flights, like maybe write an email to work, like I'm coming back. But with a heavy heart, right? And we're hoping Eric's okay. And everyone feels like, oh man, well, it's bound to happen. It's cool. But then the drummer, so we toured with this great band from England called Roughneck Riot, and they used the anti-fascist circle, the Iron Front circle, and it's kind of how we found them online, like randomly, like, oh, this band, oh man, that's the one from our album cover from Changes. I said, well, let's see what they sound like, just like, oh man, because that symbol isn't ours at all. I mean, we got it from the anti-fascist activists from the like Chumbawamba before they were a pop band, were an amazing anarchist radical band, and they used that on lots of flyers, and the Redskins band, the X but anyway, that symbol was invented in 1934, and it was used to cover the swastika. So everyone's using it, and we're checking out this band, and they're like amazing, and they're kind of like great melodic, like street punk. And they play some of the singer plays traditional instruments. There's like a violin and accordion, and a fiddle, and that's not usually our jam. But the way they did it was so heartfelt. Like songs were great. Like it didn't feel like ethnographic performance, right? I mean, mainly because they are those people from like Liverpool and Manchester, right? Like, and so it was like real deal stuff. Like they were buskers. Like their parents were like that's like 7 years and 8 years older than me in some cases, putting on Red Wedge benefit shows for the minor strikes with Billy Bragg and Johnny Marr and New Model Army. So like the lineage of that band was so tight, we had to invite them on tour, and they came on tour, and Eric broke his arm, and their drummer was like, hey man, I think I can try and learn some of your songs if you just, maybe don't cancel the shows. We want to play with you. Let's see what happens. So that awesome man put in headphones and put our records on repeat, didn't sleep or let them infiltrate his subconscious while he slept. And next morning, we short drive to Stuttgart, and load into that club. And then we do the thing. We're like, hey, can we load in early? I'm so sorry, sound man. And they're like, oh God, damn it. But it's like a youth center. So it's like volunteer run. It's cool. And then we play the songs over and over again to teach John how to do that. And Eric's there with his cast, and he's like, oh man, yeah, cool. Do the hi-hat there. Okay, less kick drum, more kick drum, all that stuff. It's great. It's fun. And he's like such a good sport. And we get 9 of our songs like tight, and we still have an hour and a half to play. So we have to figure out what we do with the rest of that time. Like, playing last on a tour, headlining a tour. So when we get together after this, give John a rest, Eric is back behind the drums, and we just do what we can, like a strange, not 100% acoustic, everyone's playing, but clean, not distortion, no fast beats. Eric's playing around it. We get him a tambourine to put on the hi-hat. It was wild, and we never did anything like this before, and we prepared daily for it, for these shows. So it was like we do this strange, clean, mid-tempo, very like anthem heavy version of ourselves with the whole band. And then we'd be like, John Dempsey from Roughneck Riot, and then he'd come out. And by the way, his bandmates were stoked, and they were drunk already. And it was like, he came out, and because we'd all been conditioned, and the audience has been conditioned to the 35 minutes of us quiet, kind of quiet, like, Eric doing really tasteful, cool stuff, but not using his right hand at all. If you can imagine that, like almost like a weird problem, like let's solve this problem, like, fun musician tech thing, like do this with your left hand. He was living it live in front of people who hadn't seen us in years and wanted to see us play our songs, or maybe just see a band. They maybe not that specific, but people got into it. And then by the 5th song, where people are kind of dancing, it almost feels like the real show, right? And like singing along, and I'm miking, all those rituals, all those things are going down, and it feels good. And then John comes and plays the drums, and people, like, distortion pedals are on, and shit gets heavy and fast. And it feels insane. It feels like all of a sudden it's Slayer. You know what I mean? Like, because of the contrast, because of the scale of it. But the rest of that European tour, I'm sorry, this is a long story, but it's so weird. Like, so we're like, okay, Roughneck Riot's got to go back home and do their, like this, they only want to be a part of a week of this tour, the first week. So then we're thinking, okay, this is great, man. John's so generous. The band was generous for loaning us him. Like everything's great. We love them. We're grateful. Like family for life style. But we're probably going to go home after this, right? Eric's going to need like maybe a little physical therapy. Like his break is severe. Like it's not like he's going to get over it in a week. And then so John's like, well, hold up. So there's a WhatsApp European punks drummers thread has been lit up a little bit. And he's like, okay, I got my mate. His name's Tommy, and he's in Austria. And he's like, it's unacceptable. I'm going to do some weird European accents for you. Just make this sketchy. Unacceptable that you guys would have to cancel the fest in my hometown that you're meant to play. I will learn your songs and be your drummer for that weekend. Like very, like that. Like John Dempsey's like totally British. He's like, yeah, mate, this is great. And then Austrian guy, it's like business, like all business. And, but he's great too. So he's lovely. And he can start with us the morning after the last show with Roughneck Riot. So we drive overnight. We load into this generous, amazing person's practice space in Graz, Austria. Graz is often described as like a San Francisco of Austria, if Vienna is the New York something. Anyway, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's hometown. But there's always been there's been a fucking amazing hardcore and punk scene there since the dawn of time, right? Like it's just one of those cities that's like what punches outside of its weight class all the time as far as having like a thick and juicy counterculture, right? Like Richmond. Anyway, the Gainesville. There's tons of other towns like it, but Graz is special, and we've had a lot of old friends, all along the years there, and played some great shows. So this guy's name is Thomas Barnett. I want to give him a big shout out. He loads us into his space. He's already learned all of our songs. Like he is like a really technical drummer, like beyond what we need, really, And so we have a practice. And again, we're like not sleeping now. We're having to play. I'm having to sing. Everything's real for 4 hours before we then go somewhere, unload, right? Carry everything downstairs, back into the van, back to the van, drive, go to the club, load it back in, do the thing. This is a lot more physical activity than we've ever probably done on a tour, right? Like, and it's fine. And we're stoked to do it, but it's like a lot of like logistics, more logistics, overnight logistics. What are we up to? How can we get to that space in time to then get to that next space also in time? But luckily most of these drummers had the answers. It's such an amazing story. Like, so this other European guy we'd never met, he is a great drummer. He's in a bunch of bands. He's like the anchor of the Graz punk and hardcore scene, as drummers tend to be. And he also, his day job is a hot sauce entrepreneur, and he has award-winning hot sauce. And he grows organic hot peppers and does recipes and formulas. He's won awards. He was quick to point out in America. Like, I guess there's like a New Mexico global hot sauce contest, and he's won it. And he's an Austrian dude, and he's like so proud, and he's awesome. Hot sauces are really good too. And we nerded out about organic farming, as you mentioned. Anyway, he like has songs he wants to play. So he's like, can you learn this? So we're like, oh yeah, sure. Like it's a whole different vibe. He's like the conductor of the orchestra. And he's like, I mean, again, we're like, hey, so this kind of clicks in on the, he's like, no, we're just going to do this. I'm going to do the, and we're like, okay, yeah. It's so amazing. Right. And then we're like, this is my favorite. Like, so there's this song, Sunset on 32nd that we have, and it's a tune we play a lot. And, anyway, we always close the set with it. It has a couple breakdowns in it. It's a bit longer than our normal song. And the breakdown has a rudiment. It's like, Eric will play rudiments on the snare. It gets, kind of breaks down a bit and builds back up. We rage back into the chorus. It's fast. And in that part, during this rehearsal, Tommy is like, it's not that at all. It's totally on time. But it's the dance hall beat. It's do, 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 do. And we're all like, whoa, shit, it's cool. What are we doing? But everything else about the song works. Everything else is in the frame. It's great. And then so after the song, we're kind of like, So that what you're doing there in the bridge isn't, and not really what Eric. And Eric kind of looks at us like, gives us a look of like, let's let him run with it. And we look, and then he's like, look, I think, Eric, I respect what you did, but I think this is sexier. And this is like the song. I mean, this is like one of our song. This is the song we play a lot and always, and it's definitely one of our main tunes. And we're like, fuck it, let's do this. This is great. I mean, otherwise, what, we'd be flying home, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, and this guy's so wonderful, and like, and it should be like this. Like, it should be like, yeah, you are now you are a peer, you are equal. I don't even know your last name yet. Like, but you're plugged in. You are deep. Like, you are an organ in this body right now. Let's do this.
Yeah, like, this is the situation. So you kind of just have to roll with it. And why not, right? See what happens. It's like this special thing that's happening.
And it was so cool because we'd already kind of like broken through whatever barrier we would have had about our songs, like a preciousness or whatever. I don't know if we ever had it, but the thing we had to do with Eric when John Dempsey from Roughneck Riot could only do 9 songs and we had to play a much longer set, that was enough to already kind of like, I don't know, like work that muscle a little bit, or like add a new like dimension or sense to, or whatever. Like, we're like, okay, it's not just, it doesn't have to be this exact way. We don't have to always have it be, like every fill is the same fill because for a long time, the muscle memory is so intense, and there's something really cool about having the song be so embedded and you're so locked with your bandmates that you are, not only do you not have to like think about what am I playing? Oh, what happens next? What's this part? You're not in that at all anymore. You're in this other state with the music where it's like, I don't know, it's hard to say this without sounding strange and new agey, but musicians, all artists know, like, I mean, anyone that's been a part of like a kind of a symbiotic process that involves catharsis in real time knows this, that you are, that song is you, right? Like, you're not really that removed. You're not having a different time. That is you. That's your time. It's going to take my whole life to figure out how to say this correctly, but that's the best I've come up with. Anyway, that's the reason why you want to have these folks. And our good friend Brian Force was also playing guitar on that tour because Mark couldn't make it because fire department. Most of the time Mark can make it work, but every now and then it just doesn't. Firefighters have a wild schedule. They have a rotation where they get like an 11-day paid break at home. And then they're also living at the firehouse those other weeks, right? With just like 8 hours off. And, it's like an algorithm or something that they have to get an app on their phone for now, of course. But so Mark couldn't do that. So our good friend Brian, who plays in the band Protagonist in Florida, was our guitarist on this. And he was just splendid and delightful and down for all of this. Like, okay, I learned a bunch of songs for you guys. Okay, now we're changing everything. Oh God, like how would you feel? Like, how would anyone feel with the situation? Another thing about this, I don't mean to belabor this story too much, but like when you're in a band for a long time, you have these songs, you play them all the time, and they're like such a part of you. You don't practice them very often, like at home. Like,
right.
Maybe you'll sound check if like you messed something up the night before. Like, I messed that up. Oh my God, let's practice it at sound check. Like, you start to get freaky about it. But other than that, that shit, it's happening. Like, you're going to do it. You don't even, it's just a part of you. So this was different. We had to teach people the songs, and then we had to flex with them about how they wanted to play the songs. All of that was so cool. And so we played the show, and it was a festival in Graz, and this guy, Tommy, who's a celebrity in his hometown and just a wonderful dude, he was really demonstrative, like stand up behind the drums and like point at one of us if we were doing something. Like, he was a star. It was badass. And it was so great because I just like jump in the crowd and like sing along, and like there was like almost a different show also happening inside of our show. Like, and all of it was so cool and like just the most different experience. And this band Moscow Death Brigade also played with us. Anyway, they are different and amazing too. More like a hip hop or dance band, but like, super anti-fascist and like gay positive and feminist and from Moscow and not allowed to be a band, dissident, take a bus, go to Lithuania, cross that border, then start your tour and say, okay, now I'm coming into your country because I'm in a band. But before that, no, not for them. And so that shit's amazing too. And we got to bond with them, and they were seeing what was happening with us too. Like, oh wait, what's going on with you guys? Oh no, like we just met you and you guys seem like a train wreck. And that was really funny too. Anyway, so Tommy could do those 2 shows. He did Ljubljana at the Metakova Squad, and he did the hometown show. All those are so much fun. And then we're like, okay, well, now we're really at the end. This is such an insane grace note, such a beautiful moment. We got to extend our tour a touch, but now we're going home, right? Tommy was like, no, on WhatsApp, I have talked to my friend in Rome, Alex Cavazzi. Alex has been watching me and John Dempsey's YouTubes. Like, it's this thing, this avalanche of people learning stuff to help
No
us
way.
out, to help our stupid asses out, has been happening without us even knowing it. And then he's like, my friend Alex is going to come. He's taking the train in Milan. And then that club will open the doors early for you once again.
Wow.
And so we're like, wait, what? So we go to the next show and we meet Alex, and he's so friendly and amazing. And he and Eric bond right away. And Alex already knows a handful of our songs, and he learns a set. And we play a show in Milan that's like our favorite, best show in that city ever, and maybe rivals our best show in Italy ever, and is one of the better shows we've played in Europe ever. And it's just amazing. Like, and all this stuff was kind of like unprecedented and surprising for us. And we were like, and Alex is so kind, and he and his wife had just had a baby daughter, right? And he was like, I mean, I don't know, like he just wanted to help us, and it was insane. And we were just like so grateful, and like, I mean, our breath was taken away by the situation. And like, he had ideas, and he was like, okay, cool, we're going to do this. And like, what if we put these two songs together? They flow really well on the set. And it was like, he and Eric had like a mini lab going back. There was like really cool bonds and experiences. And yes, he could do all the rest of the tour. We didn't have to cancel a date. We even got to make up the day that we had to cancel when Eric was literally getting the cast. That was the day that Roughneck Riot just played by themselves. But so also we had shows booked in America after that, like the Fest in Gainesville.
Yeah.
And then like a Punk in the Park festival out here in Southern California. Alex flew out to do those with us too. And it was so cool. And like, so in Gainesville, we had everyone who had been playing in our band all together. Brian was there. Mark could be at those shows. Eric was also there, and Alex from Italy. And so at the end of the final run of all the Alex shows, we dedicated to his wife and daughter, Lucrezia and Roberta, just for like, just the brilliance of them loaning us like their father and husband to make our little band do its thing that we don't do very often, you know? It was just, all of it was so special. Alex lived here at my house for like a week. Like, you know, it's like, I don't know, just that whole thing that like punk is a tribe, and, you know, we get older and like things slow down a little, and you have to get jobs, you know, and you have to think about healthcare and the future and all that. But then you still have this wild, beautiful, creative, social situation where everyone's trying to help each other out, and everyone's trying to make the best possible thing happen. And, you know, and not just give up and like, and not just turn inward and be grumpy and sour about things. And man, that's so honest and so real. And we all get that way, and it's fine. But like, just to have the opportunity when you don't have to get that way, everyone's still like smiling, and it's like hour 6, and your voice is shot, and you've just been in a practice space, and you drove overnight and all that stuff. And like, that's early tour stuff. That's some feeling about early tour when you're 20 and like, you know, but the fact that we could still get there and be in that, like, oh man, let's do this. Okay. Oh, it's different. Okay. We're going to still do this. Oh, it's still different. Okay. We're still going to do this. Like, that's the punk thing, right? That's like the thing that this whole thing taught us, that got under our skin and got us addicted to it. And like, the fact that it was still available for us, like that strange hive mind, that strange like collective problem solving and sense of humor, and I don't know, and it just moved us and melted our hearts. So anyway, that's recent story for a recent tour.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, you know, the drummer breaking his arm so terribly on tour, that's a nightmare, right? Tour is over, but the fact that you worked out that kind of stripped down more acoustic set, that's incredible. And then switching to the high energy, you know, usual set that we're used to. I mean, that's like a once in a lifetime experience for anybody who's seeing the band. But the fact that the other drummers stepped up, the fact that Alex stepped up for the remaining shows, and then you were able to fly him out to America, and everyone's together. It's like a Wizard of Oz story. There's like a screenplay here, or a concept album or something. It's a beautiful thing.
When you're in it though, you just feel like it's normal. Like, that's the funny thing about it. You're just like, all right, cool. Yeah. And like, it's weird. Like after the shows, and we're all just kind of like, yeah, it was great. It was a good, you know, and then, you know, but Alex and Tommy and John, each of them were like, let me get up with Eric and let me listen to the record a little more and see where this lands for me. I want to maybe try and do this a little differently tomorrow night. I want to do it better. Like that stuff. Like they didn't have to feel like that. Like, damn. Like it was just so and we were just smiling and just like feeling it. And like it kind of added this energy. I'm not in the audiences necessarily didn't know. I mean, I would explain like Eric's with us, but he's not gonna play drums tonight. Like that kind of thing would happen in the set. But a lot of times people, you don't always assume the audience is like dialed in and knows you and like or cares to that level. They don't have to. They're just like, I'm at a punk show, right? Like, and so I try to keep that stuff. It's not like I think it's self-indulgent, right? It technically won't explain it. Like this person behind the drums isn't who you're used to seeing, and we're gonna do this. Like I don't know, but you just want to. But something about that internally made us feel like just everything was joyful and triumphant. Like, oh my God.
It is. And I think you want to let the audience know those kinds of things are going on because then they're rooting for you more. And, for the really hardcore fans, they understand that you're doing everything you can to give them the show that they want.
It was like, it felt like this, every opportunity, like every day was like something that like wasn't supposed to happen, right? Like it was like it's that strange feeling of like, man, this is all like a grace note. This is all something that like it could unwind and change at any minute, and we have no business even doing this because we should have been on a flight home because Eric broke his arm. The classic, like we texted a lot of our friends back at home, or eventually people started to notice, and friends back at home be like, what happened? What's going on? And we even had friends from like tons of different bands like over the like text us and be like, what do you need, man? I can try and get there. I'm looking at flights right now. Like, no, we got some Europeans. I think it's going to be cool. But we love you. Thank you. Unexpected and wonderful. And like, also just to like, kind of like get deeper in everyone's lives too. And like have these new friends who saved our asses from ourselves. I mean, the fact that hadn't happened to us before, like an injury that would cancel a tour, is amazing. We've all sprained our ankles like a lot on tours and like been hobbling around for the last couple shows. And there's been stuff like that, but like a real tour ending thing, like that over all the years, we haven't really had that. So yeah, I'm sure we were due for it. It was our time.
It was just time. Well, speaking of time, Thomas, we are out of time, but we want to recap for the people here. We have the gigs coming up with No Man. That's May 3rd in Richmond, Virginia at Richmond Music Hall, and May 4th at St. Vitus, which will hopefully be open back up by then. It should be, I guess. They're going through some stuff right now, so they've been moving all the gigs to other places. But we want people to come to those shows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We love to see everybody's faces and have that time. And and Praise is going to have a new record, and No Man's new record is going to be out. And it's just going to be a celebration.
Yes. And Strike Anywhere is working on new music. We don't know when it's going to come out, but there will be something in the future, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you guys. Yeah, it's going to be forever. But yeah, we have like a bunch of new songs, like kind of a ridiculous amount of things. We might even play one at these shows, but maybe not. But the thing to us, real quick, is that Nightmares of the West, of course, was released in the summer of 2020, and we're actually still feeling like we're still on tour for that record, like that. Those are songs we still only play like once or twice, like in the States. And so that's kind of the spot we're in too, like artistically and thematically. But yeah, man, we've got new jams and we'll bring them out too.
Awesome. I'm excited. Well, Thomas, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been listening to you for a long time. I wish you and the band continued success and good fortune and no more broken arms. And listen, just thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks so much, Keith. It's a pleasure.
And there you have it, Thomas Barnett. I loved this conversation. When I got done talking to Thomas, I had a big smile on my face. He was just a joy to talk to hear more about Strike Anywhere. Amazing. Those two stories about how Nightmares of the West came together and all, them getting to venues early to sit there and practice songs and work things out. The dedication. Wow. That I was impressed because, the last runs I did, I was just always tired. You're sitting in the van, you're driving far. I mean, they're getting to the venue 5 hours early to sit there and practice and grind out new songs. I love the dedication, that story that Thomas told about all the European drummers stepping in to help them finish their tour and all the work they did to make sure that that tour still happened. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That story was so good. And beyond Strike Anywhere, the work Thomas is doing with that law firm, I love it. I love it. He's not just preaching it, he is practicing it. So I'm looking forward to seeing Strike Anywhere with No Man in a couple months and hopefully meeting Thomas in person. But this was great. Loved talking to Thomas. So thank you again, Thomas, for coming on this show. So let's check in. How are we doing? I'm good. Things are starting to wind down. I'm almost through this next recording cycle of podcast episodes. So we're going to wrap that up and take a break for a couple weeks and then do it again. And by the way, that means me taking a break from recording interviews. The show is still weekly. The show will always be weekly for the foreseeable future. That won't stop. But, like I record in bursts. I'll do 3 weeks of recording, take a little bit of time off, 3 weeks of recording, take a little bit of time off. That's the way I do it on my end. But you will have a new show every single Monday. So rest assured about that. Things are quieting down a bit. There's not too much going on. My band is gearing up to get back into the studio next week to finish up recording our EP. That's my focus right now. I want to have that wrapped up hopefully by the end of April and then work out the details of the release. So more information will come on that. And that's about it that's going on with me. So let's check in with the New Scene Community Hour. I got some nice comments about last week's episode with Courtney Taylor of the Dandy Warhols. Andrew said, "Wow, I was not prepared to see Courtney on your show. While I never associated them with hardcore, I have a long and deep connection with the Dandy's music and very much appreciate to hear all of the bits that were offered on the show. Cannot express how great and enjoyable learning about a band/musician I have listened to for so long without learning very much about. You are doing us all a great service, so thank you." Wow. Thank you, Andrew. That was great. Yeah. I didn't expect to have Courtney Taylor on the show either, but I was very happy that I did. As soon as I saw that I could make that happen, I did. Because, it doesn't just have to be hardcore bands or scene bands. If it's a band I like, and if it's a band who I think is going to have a great story, and the Dandy Warhols fit both of those criteria, I'm going to do it. So, awesome stuff. And I got some nice comments about the Claudio episode. Claudio from Prizefighter Inferno in Coheed and Cambria. Torvik23 had this to say on Instagram: "I'm nowhere near the end of this, but hearing what I've heard already, this is by far the best Claudio interview. I think as we get older, I'm in my 30s, we just start to become more grounded, more reflective, open, and just willing to talk." I really liked that. Yeah, best Claudio interview. I really liked that comment. So thank you, Torvik. And Simon, about the Claudio episode, said, "Amazing episode, real life, real emotions in this chat." Thank you, Simon. That's Simon Downbeat Vinyl, a longtime supporter of the show. Oh, and an editorial correction to something I said last week. I was talking about Ben Baker and his band In Transit. And I said Ben was part of Ashtray Monument. Now, he's signed to the label, but he's not one of the owners of the label. Lewis and Drew are the owners of the label. Ben is in a band In Transit that is signed to the label. I met all three of those guys when I played MonuFest. That's the fest that Ashtray Monument puts on. I think it was last October. Darling Fire played, and I met all three of those guys the same day. So I got confused. Mistakes happen here on the New Scene, but we correct them. So shout out to Lewis and Drew from Ashtray Monument, and another shout out to Ben from In Transit. So thanks everybody for your support of the show, everybody who's reposting reels or posting episodes or anything, anyone who's written a nice message, anyone who's left a review. I appreciate you. You keep me going. This thing keeps growing and growing, and that really motivates me to keep going because it's incredible. It's still incredible to me. I still can't believe it most of the time. So that's it for this week. That is it. We're going to end the show with a song I've been meaning to end the show with for a long time. The band is Terraformer. The song is Epoch, and this is from their 2017 LP. It's called Mineral. I've dug it for a long time. I'll add this song to the New Scene 2024 Spotify playlist. You can find all of my recommendations there, all of the bands who have been on the show. Find the playlist, like it, enjoy it. And we've got a playlist for every year the show has been active. So you can check those out. And listen, throw me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you haven't done it yet. That's a great, quick way to support the show. And we're back next week with another fantastic episode with an awesome up-and-coming band. I'll see you then.